The word Gnosis is multifaceted and ancient. It is also known for being a secret key within this reality. So today I'm going to be explaining exactly what Gnosis is. Gnosis originated as the central method to which we achieve salvation in certain sects of mysticism and in religion. So when it comes to this central theme in religion and spirituality as salvation, there are two dominant schools of thought, or two dominant systems. And that is one which is more of a religious system, which believes that salvation is only achieved through faith. Not only through faith, but through faith in a specific deity or higher power or avatar. And salvation can only be achieved by relinquishing all personal will and aligning and connecting with a certain avatar or God or deity, and having salvation only be achieved through the faith and the connection with that source. So that's more of the religious perception when it comes to this term that we're talking about called salvation, which everything in religion really revolves around. The second spiritual system is that salvation is not achieved through faith or through having a higher power be the conveyor, be the medium of that salvation. And that instead, salvation is achieved through spiritual knowledge, which is Gnosis. And it's not just any type of knowledge, and it's not even just any type of spiritual knowledge. Gnosis directly is salvation through direct experience of knowledge, but a specific knowledge that is direct experience of truth. So Gnosis is intimately linked with truth. That's the first thing that needs to be very clearly understood. It's that truth and Gnosis can even be switched. That's how interconnected they are. They can be used to convey the same thing. So on one side of the equation, we have a very dominant school of thought and spiritual system that believes that salvation can only be achieved through faith in a specific type of higher power. And through that higher power and essentially aligning yourself with that entity, that's the only way that you can be saved. And then on this side of the equation, through Gnosis, what we have is that it's really up to the person, and that the individual has to develop themselves. They can't just go YOLO. They have to sincerely develop themselves on every aspect of their energy field, meaning develop the physical vessel to receive this higher knowledge and this truth, develop the different energy bodies. And so all of this is a capacity and an inner labor to be able to receive truth and spiritual knowledge to the degree that then this individual now raises their vibration enough to be in direct communion, direct experience with truth and with this knowledge, to the point where there is no need, it's not even necessary for a middleman anymore, because now they have the divine inner revelation through direct experience. To be clear, the majority of the belief systems that believe that salvation is achieved through Gnosis still believe in a higher power. They still believe in metaphysical higher forces. It's just that they're not depending on faith and faith alone to achieve salvation. They're achieving salvation through the vibratory rate of their field being at a level so that they can commune with this higher power, with this noose or mind. And with that, they are now making themselves vibrationally equal to. This is why when you hear in hermeticism, you have to make yourself equal to something. And that's not only how we manifest. So we know this in the New Age as well, where we go, you have to feel like you already have it. So this comes from ancient knowledge, really, when it comes to our ability to vibrate ourselves into making ourselves equal to something. And that means that through that vibratory equalness, that now we're able to truly merge ourself, the lower self and the higher self, or go back to our original essence. And so it's through this ascension process, and in this way, ascension looks at the raising of our vibratory rate. is what can also just be looked at as ascension, because what's ascending? Our vibratory rate, so that we're making ourselves equal to something. That's how Gnosis is achieved. It's what raises the vibratory field. Truth and direct experience into having these higher revelations and into directly communicating. Whereas, once again, when it comes to faith, it's more of the exoteric realm. It's more of that YOLO vibe, that YOLO energy, where we might still be doing work to achieve spiritual knowledge, but at the end of the day, if we were to be sincere, we would find that we're located in faith being the primary objective and the centerpiece of the ability for us to experience salvation in whatever way or sense of the manner that we are seeking salvation. And when we're located in salvation coming through faith, that's more oriented towards aligning our will with an entity's will in order for them to save us. Whereas, once again, with Gnosis, we understand that there are these higher forces in nature, these metaphysical forces within cosmic consciousness, but we're aligning with it in the correct way, where we're energetically correcting our vibration through spiritual knowledge, through the ability to know and to understand and to apply this, so that we are literally raising our vibratory rate. So this also calls into question exactly what the role of avatars or celestial beings who come as prophets to humanity and help us come into this picture. And that is when it comes to the school of thought of Gnosis being how we achieve salvation, these different cosmic avatars or these prophets have come to assist humanity in developing Gnosis. Now, even when it comes to Gnosis, different spiritual systems did not believe that Gnosis was achieved for the main goal, the end game, to be the same outcome. For instance, in Gnosticism, mainly the outcome of Gnosis as an act of salvation would ultimately be to leave the material plane altogether. Whereas in Hermeticism, the attainment of Gnosis in the form of a salvation wasn't to necessarily leave the physical realm and to leave matter. In fact, Gnosis was meant in Hermeticism to spiritualize matter. It was to materialize spirit and spiritualize matter. And through this materialization of spirit in the physical form and this spiritualization of matter, we have within it the realm of the Hermetic would be one to where the physical realm was now imbued with more universal light. And that is the end game when it comes to the Hermetic form of salvation through Gnosis. So with Hermeticism, the goal when attaining salvation is not to be spared the wrath of a higher power, and it is not to be saved by a higher power. It is for a being to awaken into their own divinity. And by awakening into one's own divinity, they are now in direct connection with their higher expression. And their higher expression is universal light, which is also another word for Gnosis. And even more than that, it is the term that is originally what noose means. So in Hermeticism and in Gnosticism, we have this term called noose. The word noose is just as important as the word gnosis because gnosis is derived from noose, which is why they sound the same. And noose has been thought throughout the ages to be what was referred to as mind. So you have noose, which is what was translated into mind, and then even translated into from there intellect. And so we have this Hermetic concept of noose being universal light, being the all. But it was translated into the word mind or intellect when mind and intellect don't best summarize what this noose means. So the first Hermetic principle many of us might already be familiar with, and that is the universe is mental, all is mind. So because that first universal principle got very popular, we translated the term noose into thinking that noose was mind. And we could see that direct correlation. We could see why we ended up using the word mind or intellect in order to sum up what we were trying to capture in this larger term, noose. However, mind was not the proper and the most accurate way of being able to sum up what noose really means. And there's a very big important reason why this change in the wording even matters. And that's because when we hear the term mind or intellect being used to sum up the core reality of the multiverse, we're now limiting our depiction and our illustration of what noose really means. Noose, meaning mind, should have been more along the lines of mania. So mania is this divine frenzy. It's a state of altered consciousness, almost linked with ecstasy, where we can directly connect with these larger concepts like noose and understand them better. Because in our third dimensional, third density reality, our consciousness is usually in a state to where when we're hearing these concepts and when we're even talking about knowledge in the first place, it's coming from not the deepest understanding of what's being transmitted and what's being said. So when it comes to mania, which is this like frenzied or ecstatic state, we're in an altered state of consciousness where we're directly connecting with divine revelation. Mania in and of itself is multidimensional, meaning there are multiple dimensions of consciousness contained within this bandwidth. Entering into altered states of consciousness is how we are able to access and comprehend more truth. Because to obtain gnosis, or truth, we ourselves would have to become multidimensional, as we would not be able to fully understand a thing by rhetoric alone. Mania would act as the threshold to understand what could not be understood only by our logic, to touch the ineffable. It would allow our consciousness to access more levels of perception, meaning, interaction, and awareness, so as to totally understand a thing and reach communion with it, instead of knowing it by only its name alone. When we reach communion with a thing, that is gnosis. The distance between theory and practice is the distance between the mind and the heart. Theory is intellect, but practice is gnosis. And so mind and mania, although not the same, are different ways one could look at it, of them being these ways of trying to sum up this concept of noose. So even though hermeticism did not believe that noose was supposed to be translated into mania, I'm making this connection and this direct correlation. But what hermeticism more so meant by the term noose was less mind, and probably not really mania, even though I think so. What it was universal light. It was spiritual light, because light is all. And yes, darkness births light, but coming from the Hermetic thought form, if all is light, and knowledge and gnosis and truth are the personified forces of this light, then to have gnosis is to truly and deeply and intimately know and have awakened to a person's own light. So noose, being translated to mind or even intellect, does a huge disservice to this whole concept of gnosis and noose, because now we're looking at this more through the paradigm or the framework of something philosophical. We might equate mind or intellect with something where we're cut off from this true meaning of the term. Since the term noose is so large, we're only embodying a small fraction of it when we're looking at it as mind or mental. Noose in and of itself even is a hypostatic symphony, meaning that noose just doesn't encompass thought. It even just doesn't encompass universal light. If it's universal light, then it's figuring out its sentience. It's figuring out its will. It's figuring out its emanations through consciousness, meaning thoughts. So it's this hypostatic symphony that's happening that encompasses all and penetrates all. So on one chapter of our spiritual awakening journey, we might understand that all is mind or the universe is mental. from one level or layer of reality. But the more we unfold and the more that we embody Gnosis, we're now starting to connect with these concepts in a larger than life way and start to understand them and have them revealed to us in a way where we understand these concepts and connect with them completely different than when we were first introduced to them. And there's nothing that applies more to than when it comes to Gnosis. Because even when we have achieved Gnosis, it doesn't end there. There's not a finality. There's only deeper and deeper revelation and connection to our own divinity and the divinity withal. And that is why Gnosis achieves salvation in the first place. It's because it brings a person into direct merging with their higher self and direct experience and knowledge, so that not only has their discernment developed fully and blossomed into this Gnosis and intuition, but now they are no longer in a reality where they are unconscious enough to need saving or salvation. So the salvation comes as a direct correlation with their own evolution and their own ability to have developed divine revelation and divine connection. So even if we wanted to stubbornly insist that noose really means mind, it would more so be trying to convey the higher expression of mind, which is consciousness. So what we would have is consciousness, which is conveyed as a universal light, which is known as truth or Gnosis. I hope this has helped you develop more Gnosis. Make sure to subscribe to my channel for higher dimensional guidance through spiritual awakening. See you next time.